Hi there, my name is Christina Major. I'm the artist and writer of Sombulus, which is at www.sombulus.com. It's a fantasy adventure webcomic. I publish it every Tuesday and Thursday, so if you're kind of into webcomics, you should definitely check it out. I'm making this video to open up a little bit about my artistic process. As you might have observed if you're a reader of Sombulus, the art styles change from world to world, and I did that very deliberately, and I use a lot of different programs to do that. So I wanted to kind of show from initial concepts to the finished product what a page goes through when I'm making Sombulus. So, as the artist and the writer of Sombulus, it helps me personally in my process to design both the art and the script at the same time. And let me show you how I do that. The very first thing I start with are these. These are quarter sheets of paper. There's stuff on the back because they were printouts that I later just cut up and decided to use. And these are handy. I kind of like them more than sketchbooks or Bristol pads or anything like that because they're so disposable and you don't get attached to the art if you're trying to just figure things out for the first time. So when I get a quarter sheet of paper page going, this is what the draft will look like. I got 2 pages on this particular one, but let me hold it up for you. So you're going to see a couple things, just very basics. Here's Sydney, very scribbly. I want her on the page. She's talking to Rana. There's more text going on. They're trying to figure out what this compass is. Oh gosh, it's broken. And so this really helps me just figure out who's in the scene, what's supposed to happen in the scene. I don't care about placement. I don't care about layout too much. I'm just trying to see how much information I want to fit on one page. And coming from an art background trying to write, I think that's really important to be able to not get too attached to an art piece such that you're writing to make that art piece work. You can sketch stuff on this. If it's not working, you ball it up and you throw it in the trash. It's as easy as that. And that prevents you from really getting too attached like you would on a nice piece of paper with nice writing and non-scribbly X's all over the place. Start out loose and work from there. Now the next thing I do is go into Blender. This is a program that is typically used for video game design, making 3D models of things, stuff like that, and it's something that my husband introduced me to as a game designer. He taught me a whole lot of cool stuff, including how to make models of buildings, and that really helps me. If you're weak on architecture, learning a 3D modeling program is amazing. So as you can see here, this is the church in Diem, Farella, where a lot of our scenes are taking place right now. I'm rotating it around. You can see it from all angles. And just very basic shapes with people shapes to show what blocking looks like. So these people are kneeling here. If I wanted this guy in the foreground, I could do that just to show what's happening. Here's an exterior view on the right side of the screen that I could go around, I can zoom into depending on wherever the scene is happening. I can keep everything consistent. And here we've got a lot of people on the stoop here. So so obviously there's going to be a lot of stuff happening here. I'm going to try to crop in here. So I get this character in the foreground. That's going to be Sydney and these other people standing in the doorway. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So anytime I want to, I can shift people on the x-axis or the y-axis. If I want to rotate them, I can do that so they're facing different directions. It gives me an idea about lighting, it gives me an idea about blocking, and just starting to formulate that sort of thing. Now, I don't do this with every single page, but establishing shots it's really great for. And just in general, if you are afraid of straight lines, like I am afraid of straight lines, this puts things into perspective. So the next program in my list of programs that I use is Manga Studio. This is something that I just picked up for this chapter and kind of have been learning as I go. It's a really great program. I'm using EX4, which means I get to use this story mode. You can see all of the pages that we've seen so far in the Sombulus chapter all grouped into one place. I really like that. So here we are, we're starting a new page. We'll go ahead and click on that. It's a blank page right now, and I'm starting with this blue layer to give myself some blue lines. I'm going to start with the pen tool. I typically favor that one. But the first panel, we're going to pull in that file from Blender. I had taken a screenshot of that, so we're just going to import an image file. I have my architecture folder here. I'm going to look for the particular thing. You can see some other models that I've used in previous pages. And here's the one that I was going to use for the first panel. Now, as you can see, it's very large. We have scaling options here, so we could potentially scale it down to a more manageable size. Let's keep the aspect ratio. That's a good idea. Or just drag around the corners until it's maybe half a page wide. We can leave some cropping off the side here for some creative stuff later. This is the border of what the page is going to be, and I like to keep some margin around there so I can scoot things off. So so that'll be a guideline to drawing stuff, but we'll go ahead and start sketching out part of the other pieces of the page, so we know. Looking at my quarter sheet of paper here. They're going to be talking on the steps of the church here in the first panel. I'm going to roughly outline some of that. I'll drag this layer below just so I can see what I'm working on a little better, and I'll reduce the opacity even more so I can see my line work better. This is going to be Sydney. I'm just going to, these are very stiff figures, so I don't want to use them as actual models for what I'm doing. I want to give my figures a little more life and personality, but it's a good placeholder to figure out approximately what things are going to look like in the foreground versus the smaller guys in the background. So once I get some very general information down, I'll get rid of that layer pretty quickly. I want her folding her arms. Her hair is going to be kind of like this. A lot of times I'll use more than one blue line layer. I'll duplicate this type of layer just so I can develop it more beyond this, because this level of sketchiness is kind of hard to ink with. I got some hip problems here. So once all of the blue line layers are done, the next thing I'm going to do is cut my panels. So I have the Beginner's Assistant open over here. If you don't have it up, you can go into Window and go to Beginner's Assistant right here. And I choose the one panel basic as kind of a starting point. I just click the template, drag it over to my page, and it draws one panel across the entire page. Pretty good. Then I use the panel ruler cutter tool, which is over here, and make my own panels. So there's some options over here that you can play with to adjust the gutters, but right now I'm just using what's there, and I am drawing. I don't want to draw that way first. I want to start horizontal and then cut vertical. And these give me the options of making some really interesting panel decisions. Any of these, if I've decided that I want to change something, I can go over here to the object selector tool and go click on the edge of a panel, drag it around. It stays in that line you see. So it's always lined up, and I really like how it's smart like that. If you have a panel selected, you can also, whoops, no, don't do that. You can also push the A or the S key to rotate it. I don't know if it's 30 degrees or 45 degrees or something like that, to make some interesting panels that maybe overlap. If I took this one, I could take this edge and bring it over and make an overlapping panel. That might be interesting. I'm not going to do that for this particular time. I'm just going to go back to what I had and continue cutting. But it does give you some pretty cool options. And you'll notice that every panel that I make creates a new panel folder over here. Now, because this is Manga Studio, it's manga layout, so right to left is how it orders the panels. The very first panel is over here on the top right corner. I'm just going to switch this so I don't confuse myself. I'm going to label everything by number, moving the panels around to an orientation that makes sense for Western audiences. Hopefully I can remember what I'm doing while I'm recording this video. Panning down here, I've got panel 6 and panel 5, and that's all I really need to start inking. Any of these panel folders I can go into, and there is a layer created that's a black and white layer. I will select the pen tool and start inking right on that layer. I don't really need to reference my Blender screenshot anymore, and this can come way down in opacity so that I can start inking and I don't have to worry about interfering with that. So yeah, I'm going in here with my pen tool. I've got my stylus on my Wacom, and here I go. Starting to ink. Pen tool has some good thickness and thinness going on, so that always helps when you're trying to make your lines look more organic and interesting. Some people use some other tools, and I know there's a lot of settings you can adjust in Manga Studio to match your style of drawing. So definitely check those out. I'm just using the default, and I found it's pretty intuitive for me. Now, as I'm drawing faces, figures facing certain directions and stuff, you might want to use this tool up here called Flip Horizontal. That doesn't actually transform the image, but it does give you a view of what it looks like. And you can see her head's getting chopped off. I really didn't see that before. So I can continue to fix things that are a little lopsided that I didn't see because of my side bias. A lot of people have side biases, but this is a nifty tool to try to get around that and really check to see how your anatomy is working, how your compositions are working. Another thing you can do, if it helps, you can use the plus and minus keys on your keyboard to rotate the canvas. So if it's easier to make a stroke across for you by rotating things. That's something that you can definitely use in Manga Studio. Photoshop has it too. I know CS5 introduced a Photoshop option that will let you rotate the canvas, but it was so memory intensive that I couldn't actually turn it on my computer, and that's kind of a prerequisite to being able to use a tool, to make sure that it works with your computer. And I haven't had any problems so far with Manga Studios, and I'm really happy about that, because that was something that I was very angry didn't work in my other stuff. So I'm using the plus key to rotate things back around to the correct orientation, flipping this back around, whatever helps you get your lines down. There's a lot of different options. And then one other thing I want to show you, I'm not going to finish this entire panel right here, but we're going to go ahead and use the ruler tools to get some of the architecture down at this point. So I'm going to go to the line tool. It has a couple different options under the general tab here. Normally it's set to draw shape, which will just draw a straight line, no frills, on your page. But I'm going to use this option, which is create ruler. And let me show you how that works. When you draw something, it doesn't create a line, it just creates where the line's gonna be. And you can draw these over your ink, it doesn't hurt them, you don't have to erase it afterwards, so that's pretty slick. You can use this the object selector tool to grab any point and move it wherever makes sense for you. You can use any other shape that you want. So under this palette, I'm going to choose curve, drag that over to create the arch of the doorway. There's kind of some more straight lines. These don't really match. Let's see if we can make them match a little bit. I'm going to use the object selector to adjust my curves so that they're parallel. Let's go back to the line tool. Do the downstrokes here. There's a circle insignia on my doorway, so we'll use the circle ruler to draw that out. That's couldn't be easier. This is not parallel. All this kind of thing that you can adjust. And then when you're ready, go back to your pen tool and just draw on the line. Anywhere you draw will follow that line. You can still use the pressure sensitivity of your tablet to adjust how thick or how thin the line gets. And so this makes a much more organic line than simply using the line tool to draw it. Now I really enjoy that. The downside is if you're not super careful with how you're placing your points and how they join up, you're going to get some weird gaps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the S key to rotate this away so you can see the ink work. I couldn't see this before because there's all these green lines around, but now that I've rotated that away, I can fix some of the joints, and maybe I'll add some decorative elements here to fix the mistakes that I made. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm ready to use my rulers again, so I'm going to use the A key to rotate everything back. It's in the exact same place as when I drew it, so I'll continue with the circle part and anything else I need. When I'm done with my rulers, all I have to do is go to the object selector, draw a box around everything I don't want anymore. See that it's highlighting in red. I will right click on one of the lines and say delete selected points. And they're gone. So I can continue to draw freehand. I don't have to worry about getting stuck to the rulers. And that's just a really handy way to get some architecture down in an easy way, in an organic way that looks like you sat there with a ruler on a piece of paper and drew it. And I really enjoy that. So that's how I continue inking. When I'm done with a panel, I actually like to go to the next page and work on the panel for the next page. Switching things up really helps for me. I had never tried this before, but a little while ago, a couple months ago, I decided to try it out because I'd heard that a lot of people work on different pages at the same time, a series of pages. And that's a little hard to do when you're flying on the seat of your pants making a webcomic. But if you give yourself enough leeway, that's a distinct possibility, and it really helps your storytelling. So all you have to do in a program like Manga Studio is use the right and left caret options to advance to a different page. And so I'm seeing a thing here that says, is prompting me to save my work. Anytime you leave a page, Manga Studio will prompt you to save your work, which is another great thing if you don't remember to save your work all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want to save my work. Now I feel like a responsible comic artist. And as you can see, I've already started working on the panels of the next page. It's done for all of the panels. Then I move on to the coloring. Now the shading in the Diem Farella arc is this blue, gray, black color scheme that I developed when I started learning Manga Studio. So I've stuck with that just to see what the possibilities are. I kind of like it. So I'm going to start with this panel because it's a little easier to show you what's going on. It's going to be a little less memory intensive than some of the more fiddly panels. So this is a layer that I'm adding to the panel folder. I'm going to call it BG. It's a raster layer, 600 dpi is what I work in, and color mode, I'm going to switch to color. There we are. So I'll drag this under the inking layer so it won't start eating that. And I'm just going to use the magic wand tool to select everything that's in the background. There's some triangles here that are not part of Rana's hair that I want to make sure to grab with the magic wand tool. Everything else seems to be Rana's hair or Rana's body, so there we are. I'm going to click this expand selection option just to make sure that we're covering everything under the lines. And then I'm going to go in with the gradient tool. I'm going to start with black just to get a tone down. And obviously this background is not as complicated as some of the other things. So typically I don't mess with too much more than a gradient tone. And then I select the blue that I'm using for the accent color and come up from this side. So we get this kind of nice blend of things. The transparency is going there. I might go back and forth with the black a little more, but this looks pretty good. Get a little more shadow. It's supposed to be outside at this point. So that's good. I typically go ahead with a gray layer now. Even though this is gray, I'm going to change this to color as well. Manga Studio, if you use gray or black and white sorts of color models, then it will start using halftone, like little dot shading sorts of things. And that's not the style I'm going for with these particular pages. So I'm going to start selecting some things. Rana's hair is what I would typically start with. Just using the magic wand tool. All the little triangles of Rana's hair. Grabbing I'll stay on this side of the headband for now. I'll go ahead and go with the brush pen at this point. That'll add a little bit of opacity and a little bit of texture to what I'm doing. And you can layer that, and that works really nice. And that gives me the kind of textured look that I'm going for. You see, I didn't select some of the foreground triangles of hair. And that will let me give them a little more depth and a little different texture when I select them. This brush can get a little smaller, I think. Get some of the grit there. There's a lot of different brush options in Manga Studio. I encourage you to check them out. But I haven't explored too many of them myself. That's about as far as I want to go. In the interest of not having to select all this junk again, I'm going to create a blue layer. This will be color as well. We say OK, and now I'm selecting the blue. I go in with my brush and start adding blue tone to her hair to be consistent with the shading that I've been using with the other pages where her hair is. It's always handy to have another page or a character reference sheet, which is even better, to refer back to see how exactly you shaded things, if you're using different styles, color reference for your costumes, all that good stuff, because I know I will tend to forget. So there's that. We'll move on to some of the foreground hair. Okay, going back in with the brush, going back to my gray layer, going back to my black brush, and layering in some things. This gets kind of darker towards where the band is holding her hair. Lighter everywhere else. Let's go to the blue layer, take our blue color again, just like this. Because this is a rougher style, I don't mind if things get a little sketchy, the edges get a little rough and painterly. I think that's part of this style as it's evolved. I don't always know what kind of style I'm going to end up using when I switch styles. It just kind of evolves from tools that I'm using and the techniques I'm trying to practice. So I'm going in with no selection whatsoever and just adding some more blue to make that nice band happen. The other things that are big flat colors, like her little vest here, I'll go ahead and use the selection tool to use. This is definitely a blue vest, but it's a darker blue vest, so I can go in and I can change the opacity of the brush a little bit, but the brush kind of stays very transparent, not very opaque, no matter what you do. What you can do is go in with the gradient to really darken that up. Let's add some gray too, just to give some dimension and some shadows here. That looks pretty good. I'm going in with the pencil tool, mechanical pencil, and it's got some stroke in, stroke out sort of effects. If you notice, when I go like this, it gets lighter towards where I lift my pencil, my stylus off of the tablet. So that's a kind of neat effect. I'm gonna deselect all that stuff. start shading in her skin. I start with the areas that are going to be darkest, like under her eyes, under her nose, where her nose curves there. Follow the light source that I've kind of established here to show the side of the face. Shadow. Shade in the mouth a little more. I'm not really too concerned about going outside the lines with this style, but I do clean things up a little bit with the eraser tool when they start getting really smudgy and out of control. Which can happen with this particular style more than others. Going back in with the brush tool, it's a little less opaque, and just layering in some interesting shading here. A little jewel on her vest, switching to the blue layer, switching to a blue pencil to give that the blue color, and the little part under her vest I'll go ahead and knock out here. And that's pretty much all that goes into shading for the blue and black sorts of panels. I definitely have a different strategy for color. I usually do that in Photoshop, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I think I'll save that for a different tutorial. So the next thing I'm doing here, once I have all of the page colored, is I'm actually exporting it. So I'm using the export options from Manga Studio, just setting things up so that they're approximately the same size as the pages I used to do in Photoshop. Just using the image within the print guide. I want it to be in color, and I want it to be in a Photoshop format so it has those layers just in case I need to edit something. Everything goes in the same directory. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and everything renders and saves. Now we get into the fun of word bubbles. I do my word bubbles in Photoshop. I know there are tools in Manga Studio if you're just using that to do word bubbles. But since I started my comic in Photoshop, I like to keep the word bubbles consistent from page to page, from art style to art style. So no matter what program I'm using for the art, I will always use Photoshop to keep a consistent look for the word bubbles. So here I'm starting with an oval shape. It's a vector shape that you can make using this tool, around the ellipse tool in Photoshop, right there. It's white. It's got an effect, which is a stroke of 3 pixels. And my text inside is just a text layer. It's cloud splitter 4-point. We're working at 600 dpi, so it's pretty tiny, but it'll work out well when I save it for the web. So now I just start writing my text. She's calling out to Rana, using Alt to make a copy of that text layer and dragging it over here. Are you all right? And we obviously need another shape to contain the are you all right? I'm using the black arrow and Alt clicking and dragging another one over. This will make sure that the 2 bubbles, which are supposed to be connected, are part of the same shape. You can tell if you ever see this icon highlighted, that is adding to the shape area, so they're collectively becoming part of the same shape area. So for the pen tool, I want to make sure that's there as well. I'm going to start clicking, making sure I stay on the same layer. See, that's not happening because I'm not doing this right. Here we are. Starting to make
the connector for the 2 word bubbles, I'm going to use the shape to at the tail. This tail option I know is a lot easier in Manga Studio, but once you get the hang of the pen tool, it's not too hard in Photoshop or Illustrator either. And I just want to balance these a little better on the page, so I'm using the white arrow to drag the points around. For my text treatment, I usually make anything that's being shouted or emphasized in a bold font. There we are. So once all of the word bubbles are down, I'm ready to save this out for the web. What I do is I open the Save for Web and Devices window and shrink this down to a width of 600 by 931. That's this page size that I'm using right now, and make sure that the quality is something that will be easy to load for most people. I try to keep it under 200K for people on mobile connections. You never know, so sometimes that means reducing the quality a bit. That's pretty good. Everything seems to be in place. I'm going to save it and it'll be ready to upload on my website.
And that's pretty much how Page Sombulus gets made. I'm always looking to switch up my artistic process, so if you have any tutorials or cool programs that you're using that you want to tell me about, feel free to do so in the comments below. You can also find a link to my website in the notes if you're watching this from the YouTube page, and that updates every Tuesday and Thursday at sombulus.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on Tuesday and Thursday.